The spawning ground stretched before Elena like a graveyard of giants. The land was flat here, covered in a gray dust that swirled with every step. Bones rose from the ground like dead trees, the remains of creatures that had died over millions of years. Some of the skeletons were small, the size of dogs. Others were massive, larger than buildings, their empty eye sockets staring at the purple sky dot, and somewhere among these bones, the Leviathan waited. Elena had heard stories about the creature during her research before the trial. The Leviathan was old, older than most civilizations. It had been alive when the first species reached the stars. It had watched empires rise and fall from its place on this death world. Some xenobiologists believed it was the last of its kind. Others believed it had always been alone. It was the size of a small moon. Its body was covered in armor made of chitin and bone, layered over millions of years until nothing could pierce it. It had no eyes that anyone could identify, but it could sense movement from kilometers away. It did not need to hunt. Everything that entered its territory eventually came to it. Every challenger who had made it past the severance had died in the spawning grounds. The Leviathan did not chase. It did not need to. It simply waited, patient as stone, until its prey made a mistake. Then it moved with speed that something so large should not possess. Elena walked through the bone forest slowly. Her broken arm throbbed with every heartbeat. Her legs felt like they were made of lead. She had not slept properly in days. Her suit was falling apart, held together with improvised repairs and pure stubbornness. She had 3 days to cross the spawning grounds and reach the extraction point. 3 days to walk through the territory of a creature that had killed everything that had ever challenged it. The ground began to shake. Elena stopped. The vibrations ran through her boots and up her legs. Dust rose from the gray earth. The ancient bones around her rattled like wind chimes, made of death. Then she saw it. The Leviathan rose from the ground like a mountain coming to life. Dust and rock cascaded off its body as it lifted itself from whatever hidden place it had been resting. Its armor was the color of old blood, dark red and brown, scarred with the marks of battles fought before humanity existed. It was so large that Elena's brain struggled to understand what she was seeing. Its body blocked out the sky. Its shadow covered the entire bone forest. When it moved, the ground cracked beneath its weight. Elena stood very still. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do something, anything. But she had watched the recordings of previous challengers. She had seen what happened when they ran. The Leviathan was faster than it looked. Running only delayed death by a few seconds. So Elena did something different. She walked forward. The Leviathan's massive body shifted. Something that might have been a head turned in her direction. She could feel its attention on her like physical pressure, like the gravity shifts she had experienced earlier, but worse. This was the focused attention of something ancient and powerful and utterly alien. Elena kept walking. In the orbital station, the commanders watched in stunned silence. Commander Vexthal's crystal body flickered with colors that indicated extreme confusion. The other commanders had stopped pretending to be calm. They leaned forward in their seats, eyes fixed on the screens. "What is she doing?" someone asked. No one answered. No one knew. Elena walked until she was standing directly in front of the Leviathan. The creature loomed over her, its body rising into the purple clouds. She could see the texture of its armor now, the countless scratches and dents accumulated over millions of years. She could smell it, a scent of old earth and deep stone. She stopped. She spread her arms wide, her broken arms screaming in protest. She tilted her head back and looked up at the ancient creature, and she waited. The Leviathan did not move. It studied her with senses that humans could not understand. It had killed thousands of creatures in this same spot. It had felt their fear, tasted their panic, Watch them try to fight or flee or beg. This tiny thing was different. There was no fear in her, no panic, no attempt to fight or flee. There was only defiance, pure and absolute and unbreakable. This creature was broken and bleeding and barely alive, but something inside her refused to bend. The Leviathan had lived for millions of years. It had seen species evolve and go extinct. It had witnessed the birth of stars and the death of worlds. In all that time, it had never encountered anything like this. Dot had felt something it had not felt in eons. Curiosity. For a long moment, nothing moved. The wind died. The dust settled. The universe itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the Leviathan turned away. Its massive body shifted, slowly and carefully, and it began to move in the opposite direction. The ground shook with each step. The bone forest rattled. And then, gradually, the ancient creature sank back into the earth, returning to whatever hidden place it called home. Elena stood alone in the sudden silence. Her legs were shaking. Her vision was blurring. She was not entirely sure what had just happened, but she was alive. In the orbital station, no one moved for a very long time. The screen showed the tiny, human figure standing among the bones, arms still spread, watching the Leviathan disappear beneath the ground. Commander Thalax spoke first. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. In 10,000 years, I have never seen the Leviathan retreat from anything. I have watched it destroy creatures 10 times its size. I have seen it tear apart machines built to kill gods. And it turned away from her. Why? Vexthal asked. His voice was barely a whisper, because she was not afraid. That is not possible. Everything fears the Leviathan. It is the apex predator of a world designed to create apex predators. Thalax turned to look at the other commanders. His ancient stone eyes were filled with something none of them had ever seen before. You designed this trial to break challenges, to show them that they are small and weak and insignificant against the power of the universe. Every species you have tested has understood that message. They have known in their hearts that they were inferior. He pointed at the screen, at the small human figure now walking slowly toward the extraction point. She does not believe she is inferior. She has been broken, burned, poisoned, crushed, and nearly killed 100 times. And she still does not believe she is inferior. The Leviathan has existed for millions of years. It has never encountered a creature that refuses to accept its own insignificance. Thalax paused. I do not think it knew what to do with her. Elena walked through the rest of the spawning grounds without encountering the Leviathan again. Her body moved on automatic, one foot in front of the other, kilometer after kilometer. She did not think about what had happened. She did not try to understand it. She simply kept moving. The extraction point was close now. She could see it in the distance, a flat area marked with ancient symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. 2 days remained on her clock. She was going to make it. The great hall of the Galactic Concord stretched for nearly a kilometer in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Thousands of seats rose in circles around a central platform, and in those seats sat representatives from over 200 species. Some breathed oxygen. Some breathed methane. Some did not breathe at all. They had come from every corner of the galaxy, from worlds of ice and worlds of fire, from planets where gravity crushed mountains flat and moons where a child could jump into orbit. Commander Vexthal sat in the highest section, reserved for the Dominion's military elite. His body was made of purple crystal, shaped roughly like a human, but taller and sharper. 7 eyes dotted his face in a pattern that humans found disturbing. He had lived for 600 years and commanded fleets that could burn worlds to ash. He had seen species rise and fall. He had watched empires crumble into dust. And now he had to listen to a human. Lieutenant Commander Elena Vasquez stood alone on the central platform. She was small by galactic standards, barely 2 meters tall, including her boots. Her skin was brown, her hair was black and cut short in military fashion, and her eyes were the color of coffee. She wore the dress uniform of Earth United Navy, dark blue with silver buttons and a handful of medals on her chest. She was asking for something that made Vexthal's crystal body vibrate with anger. Humanity formally requests admission to the Dominion Military Coalition, Elena said. Her voice was calm and clear. Translation devices carried her words to every ear and audio receptor in the chamber. We have proven ourselves capable. We have ships. We have soldiers. We have fought and won against threats that endangered not just our world, but our entire system. We are ready to stand beside you as equals. Whispers filled the hall. Some species found the request amusing. Others found it offensive. The Galaxians, who looked like insects the size of horses, clicked their mandibles in what might have been laughter. The Vorn, beings made of colored gas contained in magnetic fields, swirled with bright patterns of disbelief. Vexthal rose from his seat. The whispers stopped immediately. When a Dominion commander spoke, others listened. Humans, he said, letting the word hang in the air like an insult. Your species discovered fire 100,000 years ago. You reached your own moon only 400 years ago. You have been part of the galactic community for less than 2 centuries. And you believe you are ready to stand as equals with species who mapped the stars before your ancestors climbed down from trees. Elena did not look away from his 7 eyes. With respect, Commander, age is not the same as ability. We learn fast. We adapt faster. What took other species 10,000 years to develop, we built in centuries. We are not asking for charity. We are asking for the chance to prove ourselves. Prove yourselves? Vexthal made a sound that his species used for mockery. How would you propose to do that, human? This was the moment he had been waiting for. He had planned this carefully. The other commanders knew what was coming. They had discussed it in private meetings, laughing at the thought of watching a human fail in the most spectacular way possible. There is an ancient tradition, Vexthal continued, a rite that has existed since before the Dominion was formed. It is called Kethver, the trial of worthiness. Any species that wishes to join our highest ranks may attempt it. If they succeed, they earn their place among us. If they fail, he paused. They do not fail. They die. The hall went completely silent. Even the Vorn stopped swirling. Kethver had not been invoked in 300 years. The last species to attempt it had been the Thornax, warriors bred for combat whose bones were made of metal. They had sent their greatest champion. He had lasted 9 days. The trial takes place on Crucible 9, Vexthal explained, his 7 eyes fixed on Elena. It is a death world. Everything on it exists to kill. The atmosphere shifts between poison and acid. The gravity changes without warning. The creatures that live there have evolved for millions of years, with only one purpose: to hunt and destroy anything that moves. Elena listened without expression. The Challenger is given basic survival equipment. No weapons, no communication, no rescue. They must cross the entire planet and reach the extraction point within 30 standard days. No one has ever completed the trial. 47 species have tried. All 47 failed. Most challengers die within the first week. Vexthal stepped forward, and his crystal body caught the light in a way that made him look like a statue of sharp glass. So tell me, human, do you still wish to prove yourself? Or do you now understand that some species are simply not meant to stand among the stars' true powers? Every eye in the chamber turned to Elena. She stood alone on that platform, small and fragile and terribly mortal. The weight of her entire species pressed down on her shoulders. If she refused, humanity would be seen as cowards. If she accepted, she would almost certainly die, and humanity would be seen as fools. She thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of people who had never seen the stars but dreamed of them anyway. She thought about her grandmother, who had survived 3 wars and always said the same thing. The only fight you truly lose is the one you refuse to take. Elena straightened her spine. She looked up at Vestal, at his 7 mocking eyes, at his crystal body that had never known hunger or cold or fear. "I accept," she said. The words echoed through the silent hall. Vestal's eyes flickered with surprise. He had expected negotiation. He had expected excuses. He had not expected this small, soft creature to accept death so calmly. "You understand what you are agreeing to?" he asked. "I understand. You will die alone on a world designed to kill you." "Maybe," Elena said. "Or maybe you have forgotten what humans are capable of when we have something to prove." She turned to face the entire assembly, her voice rising to fill the massive chamber. "In 300 years, no one has attempted Kethver. You have all grown comfortable believing it is impossible. But my species was told it was impossible to fly. We flew anyway. We were told it was impossible to reach the moon. We walked on it anyway. We were told it was impossible to leave our solar system. We built ships that carried us to the stars anyway." She looked back at Vestal. "I will complete your trial, Commander. And when I return, you will never again question what humanity deserves." 3 days later, Elena Vasquez was dropped from orbit onto the surface of Crucible 9. She carried only a survival suit, a water filter, and the knowledge that 47 species had died trying to do what she was about to attempt. Above her, in the orbital station, the Dominion commanders gathered to watch what they were certain would be her death. They were wrong. The drop pod hit the surface of Crucible 9 like a meteor. Elena felt her teeth rattle and her bones shake as the impact threw her against her restraints. Warning lights flashed red. Alarms screamed. Then everything went quiet, and she was alone. She took a moment to breathe. Just breathe. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The air inside her suit tasted stale and recycled. Through the small window of the pod, she could see the sky of Crucible 9 for the first time. It was the color of a bruise. Purple and yellow and sick green, all swirling together like paint mixed by an angry child. Lightning flickered in the distance, but there was no thunder. The clouds moved too fast, pushed by winds that howled even at this altitude. Elena checked her equipment one final time. The survival suit was basic military issue, designed to handle extreme temperatures and filter toxic air. It would keep her alive, but only if she was smart. The water filter could pull moisture from almost anything, even the air itself. She had no food. She would have to find that herself. No weapons. That was the part that worried her most. Crucible 9 was filled with predators that had evolved to kill. She would have to face them with nothing but her hands and her brain. She opened the pod door and stepped onto the surface of the death world. The ground was black rock, sharp and uneven. The air outside her suit was a mixture of carbon dioxide and sulfur. She could see yellow fog drifting between rock formations that looked like broken teeth. In the distance, mountains rose like the spines of some buried giant. Her objective was on the other side of the planet. She had 30 days to get there. The math was simple. She needed to cover roughly 100 kilometers per day. On Earth, that would be difficult but possible. Here, on a world that wanted to kill her, it was nearly impossible. But nearly impossible was not the same as impossible. Elena started walking. The first 3 days were about observation. She moved carefully, stopping often to study her surroundings. She watched the patterns of the wind. She noted which rocks were stable and which would crumble under her weight. She learned the schedule of the atmospheric shifts. When the air turned from merely toxic to actively corrosive, on the second day, she saw her first razor-winged dot. It came out of the purple sky like a blade thrown by a god. Its wings were made of something that looked like polished metal, edges so sharp they seemed to cut the air itself. Its body was long and thin, built for speed. Its eyes were black and empty and fixed directly on her. Elena froze. Her training screamed at her to run, to find cover, to do something. But she forced herself to stay still. Running from a predator that fast would be pointless. It would catch her in seconds. Instead, she watched. The razorwing circled overhead 3 times. It made a sound like metal scraping against metal. Then, slowly, it flew away toward the east. Elena let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. She had learned something important. The razorwings did not attack immediately. They studied their prey first. They were hunters, not mindless killers. That meant they had patterns. And patterns could be learned. Over the next 3 days, she mapped the razorwing territories. She watched them hunt. She watched them fight each other over food. She watched them sleep, hanging upside down from rock formations like enormous metal bats. She learned their feeding times, their patrol routes, their blind spots. By day 5, she could move through their territory like a ghost. The razorwings flew overhead, but they never saw her. She had become invisible. In the orbital station above, Commander Vestal watched the tiny human dot move across the surface. He had stopped laughing on day 3. By day 5, he was no longer entertained. He was confused. She should be dead, he said to the other commanders. The razorwings alone have killed 14 previous challengers. Commander Thalax of the Monoliths, a being of living stone 3 meters tall, watched the screens with ancient eyes. She is not fighting them. She is learning them. Learning them? They are predators. There is nothing to learn except how to die in their claws. And yet, she lives. Day 8 brought new challenges. The atmospheric shift came early, filling the air with acid rain that could eat through metal. Elena had been watching the clouds, reading the patterns of color and movement. She knew the shift was coming 12 hours before it happened. She found shelter in a cave system she had identified 2 days earlier. The caves went deep into the rock, far below the reach of the acid rain. She explored them carefully, mapping the tunnels by touch and memory. She found underground streams of water that her filter could clean. She found fungus growing on the walls that was not poisonous. She ate the fungus. It tasted like wet cardboard mixed with dirt. She did not complain. On day 10, the gravity shifted. It went from normal to nearly double in the span of an hour. Elena felt her body grow heavy. Her legs burned with every step. Her spine compressed. Breathing became difficult. She kept walking. Previous challengers had stopped when the gravity increased. They had rested, waited for it to return to normal. But Elena had done her research. The gravity shifts on Crucible 9 were unpredictable. They could last hours or days. Waiting was not a strategy. It was a death sentence. So she walked. Step by step, meter by meter, kilometer by kilometer. Her muscles screamed. Her joints ached. Blood vessels burst in her eyes, turning the whites red. She walked anyway. On day 12, the acid rain returned. But Elena was already underground, moving through the cave systems she had mapped. She emerged on the other side of a mountain range that would have taken her 5 days to climb over. The Dominion commanders watched her progress in growing silence. She was not supposed to be this far. She was not supposed to be alive at all. How is she doing this? Asked Commander Vexthal. His voice had lost its mockery. It was replaced with something he had not felt in centuries. Uncertainty. Commander. Thelax answered without looking away from the screens. She is not trying to conquer the planet. She is not trying to fight it. She's adapting to it. Every challenge, every threat, every obstacle, she finds a way around. Not through strength, through thought. That is not possible. The trial was designed to be impossible. Thelax turned his ancient stone eyes toward Vexthal. Perhaps you designed it for the wrong kind of enemy. On the surface of Crucible 9, Elena Vasquez did not know that the commanders were watching her. She did not know that she had already survived longer than any challenger in 300 years. She knew only that she had 18 days left and half a planet still to cross. She checked her water filter. She checked her suit. She looked at the horizon, where the purple sky met the black rock dot. Then she started walking again. Day 20 brought Elena to the edge of the Severance. She stood on a cliff of black rock and looked down into something that should not exist. The Severance was a canyon so wide she could not see the other side. It stretched to the left and right as far as her eyes could reach, disappearing into the purple haze of the horizon. The bottom was hidden by clouds of dust and lightning that flickered like angry spirits. Winds howled up from the depths, strong enough to knock her off her feet if she stood too close to the edge. She could hear the sound of rock cracking somewhere far below. The air smelled like burning metal and ozone. This was the obstacle that had killed every challenger who had made it this far. The Severance was 300 kilometers wide. The winds inside it could tear apart atmospheric shovels. The electromagnetic storms scrambled any technology. There was no way across it, over it, or around it. Previous challengers had stood where Elena was standing now. They had looked at the Severance and understood that their journey was over. Some had tried to find another way. They had walked along the edge for days, searching for a crossing point that did not exist. Eventually, the planet had killed them. Others had tried to build bridges or climb down and failed. The Severance did not forgive mistakes. Elena stood at the edge for a long time. She thought about the challenge. She thought about the commanders watching her from orbit, probably already celebrating her failure. She thought about humanity, about everyone back on Earth who was counting on her. Then she sat down and did something none of the previous challengers had done. She observed. For 2 full days, Elena watched the Severance. She studied the patterns of the wind. She tracked the electromagnetic storms as they moved through the canyon. She dropped small rocks over the edge and counted the seconds until they disappeared. She measured the walls with her eyes, noting the angles, the ledges, the cracks in the rock dot in the orbital station. Commander Vexthal watched with growing frustration. She has given up. She is just sitting there, accepting her death. No, said Commander Thelax. She is thinking? Thinking? There is nothing to think about. The Severance is impassable. Every scan, every analysis, every test we have done proves it. There is no way across. And why does she keep looking? On day 22, Elena stood up. She walked to a specific point along the cliff edge, a spot she had chosen after 48 hours of careful observation. Then she began to climb down. The commanders in the orbital station fell silent. No one had ever tried to descend into the Severance. It was considered suicide. The winds alone would rip a person from the walls. The storms would cook them from the inside out. The fall to the bottom was nearly 50 kilometers, but Elena had watched. She had learned. She had found something that the Dominion scans had missed. The Severance was not uniform. The winds followed patterns, swirling around certain rock formations and leaving pockets of calm air behind others. The electromagnetic storms moved in cycles, clearing certain areas for brief windows of time. There was a path down, hidden in the chaos. It was narrow and dangerous and would require perfect timing. Elena had never been very good at perfect timing, but she was very good at refusing to die. She climbed. The first day of descent was the hardest. The handholds were small and the rock was crumbling. The wind tried to pull her off the wall every few minutes. Her fingers bled through her gloves. Her arms burned with exhaustion. On the second day, her suit's electronics failed. The electromagnetic storms were too strong. Her heads-up display went dark. Her communication system, which had been useless anyway, let out a final burst of static and died. She was now truly alone, with no technology to help her. She kept climbing. On the third day, a rock slide caught her by surprise. A ledge she was standing on crumbled without warning. She fell 10 meters before catching herself on a crack in the rock. The impact shattered her left arm. The pain was beyond anything she had ever felt. White fire shot from her shoulder to her fingertips. She screamed, and the wind stole the sound from her lips. For a moment, she hung there with one hand, her broken arm dangling uselessly, and she thought about letting go. It would be easy. Just release her grip and fall. The pain would stop. The struggle would end. She would not have to fight anymore. But Elena Vasquez was not built to give up. She pulled herself onto a narrow ledge with her one good arm. She sat there in the howling wind and looked at her broken limb. The bone was clearly displaced. She could see the unnatural angle through her suit. With her teeth and her right hand, she tore strips from her damaged suit. She found 2 pieces of rock that were roughly straight. She positioned them on either side of her arm. Then she set the bone herself. The scream that came out of her was not human. It was something older, something primal. The sound of an animal fighting for survival against a universe that wanted it dead. She screamed until her throat was raw, and her voice was gone. Then she splinted the arm with the rocks and the strips of suit material. It was crude. It was painful. It would probably heal wrong, but she could move. She kept climbing. In the orbital station, no one spoke. Commander Vexthal's crystal body had gone completely dark. The other commanders watched the screens with expressions ranging from disbelief to something that might have been fear. Commander Thelax broke the silence. "What is she?" No one had an answer. On day 24, Elena reached the bottom of the Severance. She had been climbing for 4 days with a broken arm, no electronics, and almost no food. She had drunk water that she collected from condensation on the rock walls. She had eaten insects that crawled in the cracks. The bottom of the canyon was a wasteland of broken rock and ancient bones. The remains of creatures that had fallen from above littered the ground. Elena walked among them like a ghost, too tired to be afraid, too stubborn to stop. The far wall of the Severance rose before her, 50 kilometers of vertical rock. She had to climb again. She had to do everything she had just done, but in reverse, with a broken arm and no strength left in her body. She looked up at the impossible wall. She thought about her grandmother's words. The only fight you truly lose is the one you refuse to take. Elena found a handhold. She pulled herself up. She started climbing. Day 26. Elena pulled herself over the edge of the Severance and collapsed onto solid ground. She lay there for a long time, staring at the purple sky, breathing air that her damaged suit could barely filter. She had crossed the uncrossable. She had done what 47 species had failed to do. She had broken through the breaking point. 4 days remained. The extraction point was within reach, but between her and her goal lay the spawning grounds of the Leviathan, the most dangerous creature on Crucible 9. Elena closed her eyes. She allowed herself 30 seconds of rest. Then she stood up and kept walking. The extraction shuttle touched down on Crucible 9 with 19 hours remaining on the clock. Its engines kicked up clouds of gray dust as it landed on the ancient symbols that marked the end of the trial. The hatch opened, and two medical officers in full environmental suits rushed out with a stretcher. They found Elena Vasquez sitting on a rock, watching them approach. She did not need the stretcher. She stood up on her own legs, walked to the shuttle on her own feet, and climbed inside without assistance. The medical officers tried to help her. She politely refused. "I walked this far," she said, her voice rough and broken from days without proper water. "I can walk a little more." The shuttle lifted off from the surface of Crucible 9. Through the window, Elena watched the death world shrink below her. The purple clouds, the black rocks, the bone forests, the impossible severance. All of it became smaller and smaller until it was just a dark sphere against the stars. She had done it. She had completed the trial that no one was supposed to complete. The orbital station grew larger in the viewport. It was massive, a ring of metal and crystal that housed thousands of beings from hundreds of species. The Dominion's military elite lived here, commanded from here, watched the galaxy from here. And they had all been watching her. The shuttle docked with a gentle thump. The medical officers wanted to take her to the medical bay. Elena shook her head. "Take me to the assembly chamber." "Lieutenant Commander, your injuries require immediate attention. Your arm is badly broken. You have internal bleeding. You are severely dehydrated and malnourished. I need to finish what I started." Elena looked at the officer with eyes that had stared down the Leviathan. "Take me to the assembly chamber. Now." They took her to the assembly chamber. The doors opened, and Elena walked in. Every seat was full. Every commander, every representative, every observer who had watched her trial was present. Thousands of eyes turned to look at the small human woman who limped through the entrance. She was a wreck. Her suit was in tatters, patched together with strips of material and desperate hope. Her left arm hung in a crude splint made of rocks and torn fabric. Her face was gaunt, her skin was cracked and burned, and her eyes were bloodshot from burst vessels. But she walked step by step. She made her way down the long aisle toward the central platform. The chamber was completely silent. No one whispered. No one moved. They simply watched as this broken, bleeding human refused to be carried to her victory. Commander Vex Stahl stood in his place among the elite. His crystal body was dim, his 7 eyes fixed on Elena with an expression that might have been shame. The mockery was gone. The arrogance was gone. All that remained was the terrible understanding of how wrong he had been. Elena reached the central platform. The same platform where she had accepted the trial 30 days ago. She turned to face the assembly, and for a moment, she simply looked at them. Then she spoke. "Humanity," she said, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. "Request recognition." No one objected. The vote was called. Species after species registered their approval. The Chalaxians, who had clicked their mandibles in laughter when she first spoke. The Vorn, who had swirled with disbelief at her audacity. The Monoliths, ancient beings who rarely voted at all. One by one, they voted yes. When Commander Vex Staal's turn came, he hesitated. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. This was the being who had challenged her, who had invoked the trial, who had expected to watch her die for his amusement. He stood slowly. His crystal body caught the light, but there was no sharpness in him now. He looked old, somehow, diminished. "I have lived for 600 years, he said. "I have commanded fleets and conquered worlds. I believed I understood strength. I believed I understood what made a species worthy of standing among the stars." He turned to look at Elena. I was wrong. He cast his vote. Yes. The result was unanimous. Humanity was accepted into the Dominion military coalition. Elena Vasquez did not celebrate. She did not smile or cheer or pump her fist in victory. She simply nodded, acknowledging the vote, acknowledging what she had purchased with 30 days of suffering. Then, finally, She allowed the medical officers to take her to the medical bay. She would spend 3 weeks in recovery. Her arm would need to be rebroken and set properly. Her internal injuries would require surgery. She would carry scars for the rest of her life, marks of the trial that would never fully fade. But she would recover. And when she did, she would return to Earth as a hero. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. A human had completed Kethver. A human had crossed the Severance, faced the Leviathan, and walked away alive. Species who had never given humanity a second thought began to pay attention. Commander Thelax gave an interview to a galactic news service. When asked to describe what he had witnessed, the ancient monolith spoke carefully. We believed that strength meant size and power and the ability to destroy. We believed that worthy species were those who could conquer through force. We were wrong. The human did not conquer Crucible 9. She did not defeat the Leviathan. She did not destroy the obstacles in her path. He paused, choosing his words with the precision of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall. She simply refused to stop. Every time the planet broke her, she put herself back together and kept going. Every time it told her she was finished, she disagreed. That is not the strength we understood. That is something else. Something we do not have a word for. Another journalist asked what humanity's acceptance into the coalition would mean for the galaxy. Thelax considered the question. For a long moment, the Dominion has faced many threats over the millennia. Ancient enemies, cosmic disasters, wars that nearly destroyed everything. When those threats emerged, we responded with force and technology and power. He looked directly into the camera. But there may come a day when force and technology are not enough. There may come a day when the only thing that matters is the ability to endure, to suffer, to break, and keep fighting anyway. On that day, we will not call upon our strongest warriors or most advanced weapons. His stone face shifted into something that might have been a smile. We will call upon the humans, because the humans always come back. Elena Vasquez returned to Earth as a hero. Parades were held in her honor. She was promoted to captain, then commander, then admiral. She served with distinction for 40 years, leading human fleets in battles that would be remembered for centuries. But she never forgot the trial. She never forgot standing before the Leviathan with her arms spread wide, waiting to see if defiance was enough dot in her office. She kept a small piece of black rock from Crucible 9, a reminder of what humanity was capable of when given the chance to prove itself. And across the galaxy, in war rooms and council chambers and the halls of ancient powers, a new saying spread. It became humanity's unofficial motto, words spoken with respect and sometimes with fear by species who had once thought them insignificant. They do not endure because they cannot be broken. They endure because being broken is not the same as being defeated. They simply refuse to stop. The stars belong to many species. But when the darkness came, when hope seemed lost, when all other options had failed, the galaxy knew who to call. The humans. Because the humans always came back.